Hello everyone and welcome to my first deck tech and actually my first video on this channel. And I thought we would start off with a deck tech on one of my favorite decks to play sort of just for fun. This isn't a top meta deck by any means, but if you're going into the right meta, it actually does surprisingly well. I managed to win locals one week with this deck, but the meta there was very sort of soft control focused, and there were no Sabine players or anything like that, for example. This deck really struggles against aggro, but like I say, in the right meta, you actually have a pretty good chance of winning games with this, and it's just a really fun deck when you pull off some of the combos. So let's jump into it. Let's start with our 1-drops and cheap events. We have Salacious Crumb, 2 of him, just great for healing and pinging damage everywhere. And he synergizes with cards like Mars Armada, who exhaust when you play a unit to search for cards. So Salacious Crumb, just a great little 1-drop in here. You can fit him in somewhere when you have 1 resource spare, need to heal 1 damage from base. We have 3 of Timely Intervention. Energy Conversion Lab, ECL, is great in this deck. Ambush is fantastic with some of these cards, but you only get that once. So 3 Timely Interventions in this deck really help add more versatility to a lot of the cards in this deck, and the fact that you can smuggle in Timely Intervention to trigger Hondo's leader ability to give something an experience is just an added bonus. So I'm definitely running 3 Timelies in this deck. Great card. Then we have 1 of Admiral Piet. This is for late game. You probably never want to play him turn 1 unless you have no other option. But this is just there so your Devastator and your Reinforcement Walker and your Pirate Battle Tank get ambushed later in the game if you have the spare resources and actions to set that up. Then we have 3 of Collection Starhopper. This is again something you probably don't want to play on turn 1 unless you have to, but it's great to smuggle out. It triggers Hondo's ability, lets you give something an experience, and just against control matchups or hand hate matchups, it's good to have these smuggle cards always available to you. And of course, the extra bonus of playing them with Hondo is icing on the cake. Then we have 2 of Colonel Yularen, mostly in here for the mid-range and aggro matchups. You want to be doing some healing. You know, on turn 2, if you really have to, you play Colonel Yularen, followed up with a Salacious Crumb. You've just healed 3 damage from your base. And absolutely ridiculous amounts of healing if you get to pull him out with Endless Legions, which we'll go over later in this video. Then I have 3 of Mars Armada. He is a new addition to this deck. He is a set 3 card, and I was skeptical at first, but after some testing, if you're in the right matchup, he's just great for filling up your hand, searching cards out of your deck, making sure you have the right play for next turn. Just a really solid card. Unfortunately doesn't do much else. Or, you know, you could give him an experience with Hondo and he becomes a 1/5. He's just a fun card, being able to search and fill up your hand in this deck. It feels really good, so I've got 3 of him in there. Then we have 2 Ryloth Militias. This is just a great 2/3 with Raid 1, so when you're attacking it has 3 attack. Just a solid early game. You can ECL it into something if you need to against an aggro deck. Obviously not ideal, but the option's there. Our 3 drops are focused on 2 things, either stalling or ramping. For stalling, we have 2 Sentinels. We have the Black Sun Starfighter in space and the Phase 3 Dark Trooper on the ground. Both are there to slow your opponent down, and Phase 3 Dark Trooper, if you use your Energy Conversion Lab epic action to ambush him into something and he lives, gets an experience, so that's not bad. Then of course the Super Laser Technician and the Resupply are there for our ramp. I prefer to play Super Laser Technician and let him die naturally in the game, but you can ECL him or Timely Intervention him if you really need the ramp that turn. Maybe it's the 5 resource turn and you're really in a hurry to deploy your leader, but I do prefer to just play the Super Laser Technician on the field and let him die through combat. Then of course Resupply, just ramp card, great staple, goes into play as a resource. I do only have 2 copies of each of these because I feel like we do have enough ramp in this deck with command, so I felt like 3 was too much. I was seeing them too often. You don't want to ramp too many times, otherwise you're not getting any units on the field, so that's why they're at 2. Then for our 4-cost cards, we have Enterprising Lackeys. I think this should be an absolute staple in any double green deck, especially if you're running Energy Conversion Labs. for 4 resources, ambushing in a 5/5 can just basically kill anything at that point of the game. And of course, when the enterprising lackeys die, you can defeat one of your own resources, and then your enterprising lackeys goes into your resource row, so you can smuggle them back out later. That's just really solid against control and really fits with the theme of this deck, you know, smuggling stuff out for Hondo and playing cards multiple times. You know, we have Palpatine's Return in this deck to play stuff multiple times, so it just really felt on theme and an auto include here for me. Then we have 3 of Command. This is just a great versatile card in this deck. It feels bad if you have nothing on the field, but if you do have something on the field, you can give it experience, then resource Command. Or late game, you can use this to get something back from your discard pile and then also resource this card. The one ability I'm not doing very often on Command is the friendly unit dealing damage equal to its power to a non-unique enemy unit, and that's just because of this non-unique condition on it. A lot of decks are playing unique units at the moment. It's very hard to find a target for this and a time when it actually works out. If the opportunity's there, great, use it, kill something. But a lot of the time I'm either resourcing this and giving experience, or resourcing this and getting something back from my discard. Then we have a 1 of B2 Legionnaires as a 5 cost unit. This 5 cost slot is currently a bit awkward for this deck. Usually I'm trying to ramp past 5 resources, so I haven't needed 5 cost cards very often. But in matches when you're not doing that, it can feel really bad. But then that's when cards like Salacious Crumb come into play. On your 5 resource turn, you can still play Enterprising Lackeys plus a Salacious Crumb, use up your resources, feel like you've done something. So I'm not too concerned about that. 2 of Overwhelming Barrage, just you need at least one of these in every green villain. This is great. Then for our 6 cost cards, we have Pirate Battle Tank, 2 of those, and 3 Palpatine's Return. Palpatine's Return is a must-have for this deck. It's so much fun, it's so great. With Palpatine's Return and Enterprising Lackeys, you don't have to worry about resourcing your big drops early in the game. If I draw a Darth Vader after a mulligan and I have to resource him, I know there's a chance that I can play Enterprising Lackeys later in the game, and then when Enterprising Lackeys dies, I can send the Vader from my resources to my discard pile, replace him with Enterprising Lackeys, and then next turn play Palpatine's Return to play the Darth Vader from my discard pile. So you can actually cheat out Darth Vader and Maul quite consistently a turn early with Enterprising Lackeys, and that's just some great synergy in this deck. I really like that. It's a lot of fun. And then Pirate Battle Tank, this is just a great sentinel. It stalls your opponent a bit while you ramp, or if you need to live one more round because you need one more resource to play your Devastator or whatever. Comes in as a 4/6 sentinel, but of course if you smuggle it with Hondo, you can make it a 5/7, which normally takes 2 attacks to get through unless your opponent has removal. Then for our 7 cost cards, I only have 1 Darth Vader in this deck for 2 reasons. The first being I only own 1 Darth Vader. And the second reason is there is only 11 hits from Darth Vader's search effect. It feels good if you can pull like a pet and a Salacious Crumb. You heal 1 and you're set up to ambush something in next turn, like your Reinforcement Walker. But most of the time I'm missing with this effect, or I'm not getting what I want. So I'm just keeping it as 1 Darth Vader and instead running 3 Mauls. The Mauls feel really good in this deck. There's lots of Underworld cards, so you can bounce the damage off him if you need to. Make sure he lives another turn. He has Ambush and Overwhelm, 2 very strong keywords to combine together, and of course you can play him for cheaper with Palpatine's Return, and you can play him multiple times. I've had games where I played Maul 7 times, 3 times with Palpatine's Return, and then another time when I got him back to hand from Command and then played him straight away. So you can really do some crazy stuff with replaying units in this deck like I mentioned earlier in this video. Then for our 8 resource cards, we have the Arquitens Assault Cruiser and Reinforcement Walker. I currently only had 1 of the Assault Cruiser because in the set 3 meta, there weren't heaps of spaceships, and I felt running more than 1 normally ended up just filling up space in my deck. But if I was going to play this deck in set 4, I would maybe consider adjusting that number. This is great. It kills pretty much any space unit your opponent's played in the turns leading up to the 8 resource turn, especially if you've ramped ahead of them, and it ramps you. So you play this, it comes in, it ambushes something, and when it defeats it, it goes into your resource row as an extra resource. So it's a really good ramp card, as well as removing something in space. You can also kill an Avenger with it if you have enough resources and you're desperate to kill an Avenger. If you smuggle Timely Intervention and then use it to play the Assault Cruiser, then you can trigger Hondo's ability and give your Assault Cruiser an experience, making it an 8/9, which means it kills an Avenger and lives. I've done this in a game before, and it was absolutely amazing because I killed their Avenger went into my resource row, and then the next turn I played Endless Legions and got to bring out their own Avenger against them. So there's some really fun stuff you can do there with killing your opponent's cards, stealing them, putting them into your resource row, and then playing them later with Endless Legions. Just some really fun stuff. It's like I say, this deck is mostly just for fun. Then also we have the Reinforcement Walker. This is great when played. You can pretty much always heal 3 damage unless you pull something off the top of your deck you really need. And if you Timely Intervention this or play it with Emerald Pet on the field, it gets Ambush, so you can trigger the healing again because it's when played on attack. So you could heal 6 health from your base just by playing this card and also kill something. It's a must-have for this deck, especially when we want to live up to 14 resources for stuff like Endless Legions. Then for our 10 cost cards, we have 2 Devastators. We're ramping in this deck. Unless we're playing against aggro, there's pretty good chances we'll see the 10 resource turn. Devastator's a great card, kills something when it comes into play, and has Sentinel and Overwhelm. Then the last card in this deck, and the main reason I built this deck, is Endless Legions. This card is just so much fun. It feels so good when you get to play this. It's like 2 to 3 rounds of going, oh my god, this could happen. I have Endless Legions in hand. I just need to live 2 more turns to play it. And you're doing everything you can to stall your opponent or ramp. And then when you finally get to that turn and you can play it and you just throw all your resources out as units, it feels so good. Especially if you have like Yularen or something in your resources. You do Yularen first, then you play like 8 other cards. You're healing 8 from your base. You're probably getting like a Devastator out, a Reinforcement Walker, maybe a Phase 3 Dark Trooper as a Sentinel. There's probably an Enterprising Lackeys or 2 in there. It just fills up your board really quick. It's really hard for your opponent to come back from that. And with stuff like the Assault Cruiser, you could even be playing your opponent's cards against them. Really fun, really great. I love this card. Like I say, this is the main reason I built this deck for Endless Legions. It was one of the first legendaries I got from set 2. And so I always wanted to make a deck where it works, and this is what I came up with, and I've been having fun with it for the last 2 sets. So let's quickly go over the sideboard. We have Restock in here for the control matchups. We have Gamorrean Retainer, Cell Block Guard, and the Consortium Star Viper for the aggro matchups. 2 Sentinels here to slow them down, and the Consortium Star Viper is a great ECL play into early space units to heal and shut down their plays. Then we have 2 Relentless, obviously again for control matchups. Blanking your opponent's first event each turn is really strong. The second copy of Endless Legions is either for matches where we feel pretty confident we can consistently ramp to 14 and we want to see Endless Legions, or it's also for control matchups and we're afraid that they're going to mill our Endless Legions. So yeah, that's my Hondo ECL deck tech. My first deck tech on this channel. We're going to be having some set 4 deck techs coming soon. We're going to be having some Twin Suns deck techs coming soon. We're going to be opening a set 4 booster box next week, so stay tuned for that. And of course, this is my first video, so if you have any feedback for me, things I can change, make better, please leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos, subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.